a panel. Yeah, well, they're backstage. So we're going to bring them out. We're going to bring out Brian, and not Brian. How about that? All right, so we're going to bring out Brian Dobson, Brian Drummond, and Greg Baldwin. I was going to say, you guys totally messed me up. You're supposed to come out of that way. Oh, my God. See what happens when you get two Brians and a Greg? They don't know what they're doing.
There was a movie in the 80s, I think, two Brians and a Greg.
Do you want to be the meat in our Brian sandwich?
Oh, my God.
Is this thing on?
Yeah, they're on.
Apparently it is.
Built a dream of
All
mine.
right, gentlemen, we're trying to be professional here. Before we start, no live streaming. Take all the pictures you want. No live streaming. You take a video, little one, but no live streaming. Okay, those are the con rules. But we do have other rules. Unfortunately, I am Lewis from the Angrygeeks show. Some of you guys may know the rules when I run a panel. If you don't, you're in for it. The rules are not set by me. They're set by our guests. So, Brian, and not Brian. What questions are you tired of answering, cannot answer, do not want to answer, or just like, I don't feel like answering? Let our audience know now so we can get them out of the way. Starting with not Brian.
I'll field anything.
Greg, fire away.
I'll try.
I prefer not to talk about my voice acting career.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Brian?
What do you want to talk about?
No, I was open table. I will talk until it gets uncomfortable, and then I'll stop talking. So go ahead and ask.
All right.
Wow, this is good. What do I not want to talk about?
Or can't you talk about? You're just tired.
Well,
of talking.
can't is anything I have an NDA signed on, I can't talk about, but no one would know what that is, so I just won't talk about it. So usually people ask, what's a future project? And I'll say, there's fun ones, but can't talk about them.
Groovy.
But outside of that, I usually will talk about anything. How to become a voice actor is a tough one to kind of leap into in the middle of a con. It's a bit long-winded, and if you want to know about that one, I'll tell you what, go to a website called iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. Whoever wanted to ask that question, iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. D. Bradley Baker, one of the greatest voice actors of our generation, of all time, he created that website because I think he didn't want to answer that question anymore, and it fills in a lot of blanks. So, so check that out. It couldn't be easier. iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. And then you don't have to ask us that at all. He answers it all.
Wow. All right. Everybody just left the room.
And they're gone.
Crickets.
So, Voices of Doom. That's the name of this panel.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you guys are all bad people, man.
We're terrible people.
Extremely
Our characters
naughty.
are lovely,
Very
but-
naughty, yes.
But I also voice a very good person, so I could go both ways.
Yeah. You gotta have a little bit of that.
There's a joke there, but I would get...
I was going to say something.
I would get thrown off the stage immediately. So...
I know.
Yeah. Greg, you have to be a not Brian. You have to be a not Brian.
I'm not Brian, you know. So I'm in my Brian sandwich here. I'm in my comfort.
Once again, we got to go back to
We got the Brian bread and the Greg Baldwin meat right here in the middle.
Here goes Greg. I can go both ways in a Brian sandwich. All right, Greg, come on now. Pay attention. My God. So what's it like being a bad guy? I mean,
bad guys are the best. I don't know what it is about writers. They love writing villains, and they always get the sweetest dialogue, some of the greatest scenes. They always get to be a little bit more over the top than the protagonists.
A little more maniacal.
Yeah, you get to. Of course, you always get to do a maniacal laugh or two, which every voice actor wants to have a couple of those in their repertoire. But
just let me cackle. Somebody.
Hey, just to let you guys know, if you have a question, please line up to the mic so I'm not taking up all your time.
Because we'll keep going.
Yeah, we'll definitely will.
Yeah, there's a mic, and we would love to answer them.
Where do you find your most evil voice for your villains?
Well, in my case, it was pretty easy. Mako Arumatsu, who was the originator of Haku. So it was very easy for me to find the voice, is try to sound as much like Mako as you can. And to varying extents, I think I succeed. Ironically, because Mako did two roles that he's quite famous for, Iroh on Avatar: The Last Airbender and Aku on Samurai Jack. And the brilliance of Mako is Mako was nominated for an Oscar, a Tony. He was, you know, the real deal. But you know, Iroh is very much on a Zen level. It's very much on a straight line, whereas Aku is all over the place. And Aku has to go from terrifying to funny in a split second. And the genius of Mako was that Mako was able to make those transitions very quickly. I always struggled with him a little bit because going from terrifying to hilarious is, you know, yeah, and quickly. I mean, in a split second. So for me, at least, that's how I found the voice. It was like provided for me.
And I just want to let you know that I'm one of your biggest fans.
Oh.
Well, Samurai Jack, I don't know about y'all, but I just love that show. It's amazing.
Great series.
She's
Visually,
when I knew you were
visually,
coming,
there's nothing
Excuse
like
me
it,
one
you know?
second. She's like so excited right here, this young lady.
You're with me on this, aren't you? It's true. It's an amazing show, and I just I salute you for giving an amazing voice print. And
You're very kind.
heck
Visually,
of a
there's
series.
nothing like it. You know, you could literally freeze frame any still from the show and throw it on your wall as art. It's that
It's
beautiful.
so the artistic design and everything about that show is one thing that just I was so caught off guard when I first saw it. I thought it was amazing and just like, wow, what a breath of fresh air. So, yeah, kudos.
Villains. Villains. Back to them. How do you come up with a voice? Was the kind of the question. And I always just, at least if it was a character I was didn't have to find based on someone else initially, was to go with the creator's vision of who they were, and then really just kind of dig into the script and figure out what that character wants. And because I never really think of any quote bad guys that I've played as being bad guys. They just have different wants and desires than other people, and they're just doing what they need to get to the end goal of what they want. And for most people, though, what they want is hideous. You know, what they have to do to get what they want is awful, so that makes them a bad guy, but not to them. Like with Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z, when he first showed up on Earth and was willing to destroy everyone and kill and maim and do whatever he could to get the Dragon Balls, that was not a problem for me. I just had to go to that zone of how badly would I do anything to get what I desired. And sometimes you have to think about whether it's to protect your children or to save yourself from dying, and then you scream or yell or get furious at that level. And it seems like a villain once you do that sometimes, yeah.
So you had no problem coming up with that voice?
No. Well, sometimes it's a problem when you pick those voices and you think, they probably just got a few lines. I know when I auditioned for that role, they just give us dialogue. They don't give you like all the screams in the audition. No. You're like, oh, he just talks like this, and this is what he sounds like. Kakarot, you fool, you chump, you clown. Right? But no. We didn't tell you about the screaming sequences.
I think they hide that for some reason. I think they almost hide that because it's like, well, let's not scare them away too quickly.
Yeah, we don't want them to know about those bits.
We'll get there. We'll let you know about the vocal bleeding that comes afterwards.
yeah. We had none of us had any idea on those kind of shows that there'd be power-up sequences that would last for 4 episodes of just and it would go on and not stop.
Well, the power-ups, exactly, because it was... You're going full bore, everything you've got, and then you've got to cut. This is the old day recording, remember? Don't forget, right? And then you've got to, you'll hear 3 beeps in your headphones, beep, 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 and you seam 10 or 15 of those together to make this scene. And it was vocally, it's a massive, I call it a vocal frappuccino. I had to book anything Dragon Ball Z, had to be booked on a Friday, so I had 2 days of healing afterwards.
Yes.
Wow. I mean,
fun.
That and Warhammer 40,000. Yeah, those were...
Oh, that was a terrible Warhammer.
Wow, big Warhammer fan.
Yeah.
Never volunteered to be an orc war boss, ever.
Did you ever have a issue saying, oh, this character sounds too much like this character, I'm going to have to tweak my voice a little bit?
Nah. Unless the producers said that. I think they know that all voice actors, they have a range, and I know when I hear some of the greatest people that I respect, the Mel Blancs of the world, we all know lots of his characters sounded like other characters, but they were still a distinct character. So, and different dialogue, different writing, different visual. I know I have a few that when I listen back I'm like, wow, that's very close to that guy, but the visual's different and the scene's different and the character's different, so you forget that pretty quickly. If they have a scene, if they're in the same show and are talking to each other, then you got a problem. And that they sometimes make that mistake and book you playing a couple of bad guys and don't realize 150 episodes in, ooh, they've got 2 scenes together big time here, and you got to play off of each other.
How often does that happen?
It happens more often than you'd think if you have a couple of roles, but then sometimes you try, well, I'm going to put that guy in his slightly higher range for this scene and put my other guy in the slightly lower range just to separate a little bit.
The directors would be adamant of that, just like, just for this one scene, can we just give you a couple of, pitch it up a peg or two?
Yeah.
We'll get through it, and we'll bring them back after.
All right. Audience, any questions, please line up or we will talk constantly.
Yeah, there's a microphone.
Yeah, I see people looking at each other. Yeah, please, line up.
Line up. The microphone's right in the middle there. Go stand
right
at it and say, here's my question.
Don't fight over the mic. Just line up.
We won't bite. We've had all our shots.
Hi,
We've literally had all our shots. Yeah, literally.
what's your name?
Morrow,
Hi, Mara.
Hi, Morrow.
do you guys prefer to drink tea or coffee?
Wow, do we? That's a great question. And it might be the first time I've ever been asked that. I am a coffee drinker. My wife is a teetotaler.
Oh. How do you drink your coffee?
How do I drink my coffee? I'm actually a bit of a boring coffee drinker. I just like a nice, straight, dark roast. I'm not the frappa, chappa, chippuccino with the caramel and the macchiato. No, I kind of just straight up, little cream and sweetener, and I'm happy.
You like
There you
that
go,
bean?
fans. Bring
The
them a
bean.
coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all about the bean.
That is about a good bean, too.
One of my characters is very famous for drinking tea. And so I should say that I like to drink tea, or to be honest with you, I don't drink a lot of coffee or a lot of tea, either one. But people will often ask me, what is my favorite tea? And they want me to give a sexy answer like ginseng tea or jasmine tea or Darjeeling, something exotic. And the fact of the matter is that I was raised in Texas by Texans. If you've ever been to the South, you know what kind of tea I like to drink. I like my tea sweet tea. That's how I enjoy it, you all.
Sweet and cold.
Sweet and cold. That's how I like it. Woo, doggies.
And Brian, how about you?
I'm a huge coffee fan, and I drink far too much, and I've got to pull back on that. But yes, coffee would be my first.
Which one? Are you a frappa, chappa, happuccino, Mr.?
I do. I don't mind a nice, every once in a while, oat milk latte.
Wow.
All right,
Or
fans,
sometimes
write
I
that
just
down.
prefer a black, dark. Like sometimes I'll go just black and have a regular drip, wonderful coffee. I'm fine
Black
with that.
with nothing in it.
But on the other side of the fence is tea, and I love a lovely rooibos or anything like that when I can get there.
You're of English heritage, so you should drink a good cup of tea.
I am British.
Bottle of tea and a crumpet.
You are British.
Yeah, people know that.
Thank you. Look at what everybody knows now.
Now tomorrow you're going to go to your,
Thank
or
you.
later on you're going to be at your tables. Everyone's going to be
Coffees have
and
arrived.
tea everywhere. Hi, what's your
Hi.
name?
I'm a little short. Jenna.
Hi, Jenna.
Okay.
So I have 2 questions. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. One is for just Brian Drummond, and then the other's for everyone. The first one for Brian Drummond. So you were the voice of Vegeta. You were like my childhood voice of Vegeta, you know? And I was wondering, because you know how like voices kind of evolve over time? Yeah. And like Vegeta, when you were, he was like kind of dastardly. I got wrong. But, you know, then he kind of like softened up as the years went by. I was wondering if you think that you would have changed his voice in any way, like if it just kind of stayed the ocean dub and then just kind of.
I think probably because he does change as a character a lot. That's why he's such a popular character in Dragon Ball Z. He's got one of the greatest story arcs of all the characters in the series. So he moves through a lot of different sequences. Obviously, he has a relationship with Bulma. He has a child. He needs help at a certain point, so he has to have some help from Kakarot and other characters. So he's not just relying on his own power when he realizes he isn't the strongest in the universe like he thought he was and could do anything he wanted. So I think probably it would have changed over time as well. And also, as performers, no one really thinks a show's going to last for 25 years either. But I think I was about 26 maybe when I first voiced Vegeta, and I'm coming up on 54. So it's double so your voice changes a bit over time. So he was pitched quite a bit higher. Kakarot, you fool! He was much higher with that princely sort of arrogance.
Yeah.
And then Chris took him. Chris has a naturally deeper voice. He had to match me at first, but then now Chris has kind of got, Kakarot, you clown, you're a terrible father kind of thing. He's got it deeper, but I don't know if I probably would have gone as deep as Chris, but it definitely would have moved over time, and it would have been interesting to see. If you ever saw all of the Dragon Ball Z dub that we did in Canada, that was seen in Canada and the UK and Ireland and some European places as well, it does change a little bit from my first episodes when I appeared back in the early 90s.
Oh my God.
Search those out.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah,
so
you gotta
bad.
find those. But yeah, it did change.
Okay. And what I was going to say with all of you is, like, I know that there's a difference between obviously dubbing and then having an American voice where you can just kind of like, you can just talk and then they'll kind of animate over it, I believe. And then for dubbing, it's like beep, and then, yeah, you have to like, I'm just wondering, is it annoying? Do you get like a feel of it? Like, do you prefer the dubbing or do you prefer just the actual voice, the American voice? If you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, because you got ADR, the dubbing stuff, and then we have prelay animation where they animate to our voices.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
I mean, I think most will say the prelay is a nice thing because you get to bite into the acting a little bit more. It's your own signature, your own voice print that you're putting down, and the decisions you make with the run of the scene that you're doing is yours as an actor.
Yeah.
So I don't know too many people that wouldn't rather have that on there. Although, I mean, with the challenge of dubbing, I love. There is certainly a massive challenge.
There's a technique to it, a real technique to it, and I'm not very good at it.
100%, 100%. There's a technique, and everyone's kind of got their own mojo as to how they get through ADR sessions. In the day when we first started doing the dubbing, like this Dragon Ball Z stuff that we're talking about, the breakdowns were not so as they are today. There would be like a full paragraph of dialogue, and you get your set of beeps out of the gate, and you had to do the Hail Mary praying that you could get through this paragraph out to the end and somehow finish the sync. Where now it's all broken down into sentence by sentence, and it's really easy to get the sync and everything matched up. So I love the challenge of the dubbing, but I love the freedom of the prelay.
Most actors are pretty social beings as well, and in a prelay scenario, we very often get to work together as a group. Might not be the entire cast is available to be there,
but
sometimes it's 2, 3, 4 of us. We're in a room bouncing off each other, so Greg would say a line, I get to respond to it, Brian responds to mine, so we create the scene as performers, as opposed to, I have no idea how the actor is going to do the line before mine, unless they've done it already when I dub a character. Sometimes nobody's done. You're the first one in. You never get to hear how anybody reacts to your line or how you react to theirs. You just do your own, and it's a little hard.
You know, and I miss that. I miss being, my wife and I moved from California to New Mexico, where I was born in 2020, and because of COVID, I had to update and have a studio that's a working studio. And I'm on a show called The Ghost and Molly McGee for Disney, and I not once have been to LA or recorded with a fellow castmate, not once. So it's the commute is great. Yeah. You know, I can go there in my pajamas. It's in a garage that we rebuilt, so it's great, but you don't have that give and take with your fellow actors. So, you know, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
If we could just, Star Trek, like, zap ourselves into the studio, record, and then head home, man, we would all probably be in the studio to work with each other if that was...
And I guess you could, like, do a line reading with each other before you do the scene and stuff as well.
Sometimes you do a run-through and do kind of a rehearsal, but lots of times they tape a rehearsal or record it anyhow, because sometimes there's just good stuff in it. So they say, let's do a first pass, and then they'll go back with notes, maybe a second pass, go back again, maybe get an individual line that had a mess up in it, but you're working as a group, and it's a blast.
Yeah, the chemistry that you develop with as a group, there's something to be said for that, for sure.
Yeah, that's how we did all the He-Man stuff, was
remember the day,
the days of all that, was really fun.
It's so much fun.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, what's your name?
My name is Christian.
Hi, Christian.
Hey, Christian.
I only have at least 2 questions for all of you. My first question is, what gives you motivation to play as the villain?
Ooh. What gives the motivation to which?
Play a villain.
Motivation to play a villain. Well, like I said earlier, it's what does that character want? for me. The motivation as Brian to play a villain, the paycheck, that motivates me.
Yeah,
that motivates me to play the villain.
Yep.
Once I am the villain, once I am the villain, then it's a different story.
Yeah, I think, that's what motivates you. You could go in and you get the gig. We're actors. You got the gig. That's 90% of being an actor is just getting the gig. If you've got the gig, it's like, wow, that's fantastic. In terms of what motivates the villain, I agree with what you said earlier. It could be all manner of things. I mean, Aku was a little more simplistic because he was literally an ancient god of evil. He literally was not human in any way. And his only real motivation was simply to kill the foolish samurai. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out. I'm sorry.
I could listen to that all day. Such a great voice.
I know.
Yeah, no, I find in some cases you have that freedom of creativity where they just want you to discover the zone of that villain, and other times you've got a breakdown package that really guides you into what they want as what the producers are looking for, and then you get your 10% on top of that of what you put on it. So it varies from project to project as to what freedom you have to kind of create that villainous character. But a lot of what Brian was saying about what their wants are. Study that character, know as much background as you possibly can for that character, and the voice print will come.
Role is really pretty exciting on a pre-light type show where you're not trying to match anything that's been an existing Japanese actor or French or German, whoever's played it before, because you get a group of producers, animators, writers, everybody in the room, and sometimes you'll be cast and you get in there and they'll be bickering a little bit behind the glass because a producer wants it a little deeper and gravelier, but the animating team that created the visual of the character wants them a little more, slimy and creepy, and so they're constantly, can you make him what would he be like if he's this and that? And if you're able to play with your voice and give them off lots of ideas, sometimes you come up with the sort of a final version in the room, and that even changes a bit over seasons of a show too, which you probably noticed from lots of shows that have long seasons. The characters change a lot over time.
It's great to have the opportunity to create an arc, especially for a villain.
Yeah. What was the other question?
My other question is that, do you see yourself as the villains when you voice act as them?
Do you see myself as the villain when I voice act as them? No. Honestly, as an actor, I feel like I can just turn things on and off when I need it and bring the vibe to it. I can find a place where I can scream in abject, horror or anger, like right now. I could do it if someone, any of us could do it, turn it on and off. As you've been at it for a while, you're able to do that. And I think a good performer can just manipulate their voice. I never feel like I fall into a role. I'm not Christian Bailing myself through any of these series. And
I think basically we have a panel here of character actors over method actors, and I think sometimes the method people need to find a place somewhere personally or whatever it is to kind of get them into that zone where character actor is literally, as Bryce said, you flick a switch, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. I don't know. When I was voicing Aku, I did sort of use the method. Before every recording session, I would go out and find a samurai and kill him. And that really helped my performance a lot, And I'm wanted in several states now, but
Ever walking down the street, are you a samurai? No. You are a samurai.
Certain techniques are necessary, and I'll take that one to the bank. Wow.
Thank you,
Christian.
Christian.
Thank you.
Before we get to our next audience question, how do you remember a voice? How do you remember each character's voice?
Good question. Sometimes we need help to remember them. If you're on a lot of shows, they'll keep a database of a ref. They call it a ref or a voice reference. Usually I'll know it, and but everyone needs a refresher every once in a while, and they say, could you play my ref for me? Because I feel like I'm a little gravelly today, or a little too high, or I'm a little pitchy, or am I on track? And they'll play it, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're a bit deep. Let's get them up a little bit. Or it's like, no, it sounds good. Okay. And even they'll want to have a re-listen so they get it in their own heads as well. But yeah, they bank a voice reference for you just for that reason. And sometimes they change a reference as the series moves on. They find a a sequence that you did. This is really him. Pull that one as the voice reference because we love where he sits right here, and they'll play that for you.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
She was super excited sitting there, so I actually asked her to go up there.
Nice.
What's your name?
Marlene. Hi.
Hey, Marley.
Hey. So as voice actors, how far in advance do you get some of the, your lines? And have you ever been really like surprised by what the next thing is happening? And when you're reading it, you're like, wait, what? You know what I mean? So like, how do you kind of like either incorporate that or don't incorporate that, or kind of have to hold yourself back from being like, oh, I didn't know this is where the story would go?
Well,
We're all thinking.
with anime, I find in particular, we're predominantly going in cold.
Yeah, we don't get a lot in advance.
We don't get advanced. I go in and my scripts are there, and then I do a real brief rundown of it when I've got my 5 minutes, whatever it is, before we start going into record. So I get a visual lockdown of each page as I go along. So I have an idea. Okay, he's going to get excited here. We got stuff coming up, emotions, whatever the case is, and that's it. In prelay, often we get scripts, and depending on the character that I'm playing, will I do a full study before the show record?
We'll usually get those scripts sometimes up to a week in advance,
Yes.
or
Yeah,
maybe
like a
not
week
that
in
far.
advance.
Yeah, but yeah, dubbings. I don't know with you, Greg, but for us, often it's the scripts are there when you arrive, but they didn't always send them to us. So I know when I was working on Deathnote, I would roll into the studio and go, "What's going on? What?" and figure it out when I'm in there. And sometimes you'll be on those shows, you're like, "Oh, I died." I guess
Oh, no, I died.
I guess I'm not working on this show next week.
Should I diminish his energy?
They
to
just
the
wrote
death?
my name in the Death Note, so I'm dead.
Yeah, I would actually generally, especially on Avatar and Samurai Jack, we'd get it about a week ahead. And I have a funny story with Samurai Jack. Frequently, they'll say, "Do you want to send along the storyboards as well?" Because the storyboards can be helpful when you have an idea of how it's going to actually look when it's up on the screen. And my first time on Samurai Jack, they said, "Do you want the storyboards?" I said, "Yeah, send along the storyboards." Not realizing that Gendy Tartakovsky storyboards the hell out of everything. So literally, I went through a ream of paper like that, literally just printing out the storyboards for one 22-minute episode. I didn't do that. That was the only time I printed the storyboards from Samurai Jack. But yeah, I would generally get a pretty good, I'd get an artist rendering. Frequently, I did a show called Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. And they sent me a rendering, and the character was clearly a policeman. It looked like an English Bobby. So I go, all right, well, he's clearly an English Bobby. I'm going to prepare my Cockney accent and go in. I go in, and the director says, "Now, this character is Irish." Well, of course I knew that. I knew it all along, my darling. He's as Irish as air in itself. Certainly he is.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Hi, what's your name?
Brendan.
Hi, Brendan.
Hey,
I
Brendan.
had a few questions for Brian Drummond.
Yes.
First off, in terms of the infamous My Wrath take, did your voice have to go into recovery after that performance?
The infamous which? Oh, Escape My Wrath.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I've said this before. That sequence, I lost my voice on when we did that sequence because he screams for so long when he's going after Gohan and wants to kill him, literally rip him limb from limb for tricking him, hiding that Dragon Ball. That's the only show. I lost my voice on Warhammer. After doing a 4-hour sequence of screaming as an orc, and I lost my voice twice on Dragon Ball Z. That's the only time in almost 30 years that it was gone. Like it was probably 3 or 4 days where it's just kind of whisper, kind of like it was toast at the end of a session. I probably cut the session short because it was gone. Yes, it was not good.
All right. Second, also regarding that, I don't know if you ever saw it, what were your thoughts on Nick Lenny Pator Landis's take on that scene in Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and what do you think of their project in general?
Oh, Dragon Ball Z Abridged is hilarious. I've met a bunch of those guys before, and I know I've always been of the thought that anybody who can create more interest, more lore, more outside versions, fun things that draw a fan base to a community like Dragon Ball Z. It's just good for business. And I think the stuff they did was hilarious. I've seen so many memes. I've seen so many bits. I've chatted with some of the guys before when they've met them. And it's hilarious. Like, so much of that stuff was just too funny. I mean, they should have been writers on the show, honestly, in the first place.
And then lastly, obviously one of the scenes you didn't get to do, very infamous for Vegeta, is the final atonement scene.
Yeah.
What would your approach have been, or what would your final lines have been for him in that dub?
The final atonement scene. What episode would that have been about in the?
In the Boo arc where he sacrifices himself?
Yeah, so I did do that in that because I did all of Dragon Ball Z that was seen in Canada, the UK, Ireland. So I did do that whole sequence. I don't remember exactly what our dialogue was for it, but it's a good scene. See if you can find it.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
Hi, what's your name?
My name's Tori.
Hey, Tori.
Hello, Tori.
So I have two questions. One, if you could have any anime power and or weapon, which one would you have?
Any anime power and or weapon. Ooh. Wow, this could span a lot of different anime.
Firebending.
Yeah. Oh, firebending?
Definitely firebending. You know, I have to say that anyway. But I think that would be it would be a useful skill. You know, if you can breathe fire, it could come in handy from time to time.
That's tough. You know, the strength would be amazing, but the ability to fly would just be standing somewhere and just pop up into the air and somewhere else. Like, would that not be incredible? I don't have to have the power to, you know, incinerate someone I don't know, but I think that as on this planet, like, would be pretty incredible.
What about the power to morph?
Morph. Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
That would be handy.
Whatever the heck I want to. I think that'd be kind of handy.
Yeah.
So,
or whoever the heck you want to be, like a scroll.
Or whoever, whatever, anything. I mean, that's pretty,
scroll, yeah.
pretty huge. So I'll go with that for
Good
today.
question. Good questions.
And the second one is just kind of a general question. What was your favorite character to play?
No, I don't know if anybody can guess my favorite character. He's on the poster by my picture, and I'll give here will be the one hint. I played him in 5 different motion comic movies, and he was a favorite character, comic book character of mine as a child. And if you're listening, I already told you my age earlier here tonight. So what do you think could be a character that was in the comics when I was younger, 8 to 10, that I got to play as an adult that might suit my gravelly, raspy voice?
Honestly, that could be like so many characters.
It could be so many characters. Wolverine. I got to play Wolverine in five movies, and it was a blast because he was my favorite as a kid. So when the opportunity came that I got to play him in 5 different films, was just like, it's
Wolverine
kind of like
versus Hulk.
Versus Hulk and Sabretooth, Wolverine Origins. Yeah, they were great. Really fun.
I was supposed to talk anime, not comic books. That's why I didn't
sorry. But you asked my favorite character. You asked the favorite character. Sorry, it should have been an anime character.
You gave me
wrong
the
answer.
leeway. Thank you, child. No.
I know this is a panel. Do not disappoint me. I know. You know, this is a panel of villains, but I would have to say that my favorite character would be Uncle Iroh from Avatar.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, I always knew it was a well-written character, but once I started going out to these fan conventions and meeting fans, and people would tell me these stories about how Iroh was a father figure. I didn't get along with my father, or Iroh got me through this very dark time in my life. And I have to think, you know, there aren't many animated characters that affect that much good in the real world. So yeah, it definitely would be Iroh. Iroh makes everybody a better person. Iroh has made me a better person. So definitely Iroh.
Okay,
nice.
powerful, very powerful. It's weird because I think a lot of folks would expect me to say Skeletor or Majin Buu.
Skeletor never made anyone a better person, Brian.
It didn't. I didn't really.
Only the memes. Only the memes with Skeletor.
Skeletor was my father figure. Come on, man.
I know. Yeah.
He was like a father to me.
You see what happens? Every time. But a childhood thing, kind of like Brian. I grew up reading a lot of Fantastic Four and stuff, and I was just like in love with the character of Ben Grimm. And so getting that chance to play him. And he was also the only character I tore my larynx on working with. It was one of the final episodes, and I was fighting Mark Gibbon, who was playing the Hulk. Mark is an extraordinarily huge man. When he speaks, you can hear the size of his lungs. Kind of, you know, he's a big guy, and when he plays the Hulk, he pushes him into this like massive thing. I remember Ian Richter, the executive producer, we're doing this fight, and as we're going through, and every time we'd finish the fight, he's like, "Brian, that was great, but I think Mark's still killing you. You got to get it bigger. We got to go." And I'm just like, "Oh, shall we go again?"
Thing versus Hulk. I like it.
Yeah, and I started feeling this heat coming up on the side of this side of the throat, and it was getting really bad. By the time we finished that session, I was like, "Ah!" And I had to go in, and then they do what they to the hospital. They had to do what they call a laryngoscopy, where they put the camera up your nose and down the back of your throat. They did an inspection, and sure enough, I'd torn my larynx on the left side. And this is just when we're doing He-Man too, right? So I'm just like, "Ow! I've just lost all my work. I'm gonna be fired." So I had to do a month off, and I couldn't talk, and so I had to do notepad and pen. And you're tempted to whisper when you tear your larynx.
Skeletor is much less effective when he's writing things on a pad of paper.
The evil factor is lost. All effect gone. And you want to whisper, but that actually makes it worse if you whisper to it forces the tear. So yeah, it was really tough. But
Skeletor.
I still love him. Ben, thank you for the pain.
It's Grimm.
Thank you so
Pain-bringer.
much.
Thank you.
You are going to be our last audience question.
Oh, all right. Fire away.
So, first question, I have two questions. First question
Hey,
is,
I just said you're going to be our last. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm sorry.
Go for it. I mean, to get your name.
Oh, I'm Joel.
Hey, Joel. Nice to meet you.
So my first question is, throughout your entire voice acting career, whether it be in the recording room or scene, what has been your favorite moment?
Favorite moments throughout 30 years of voice acting. That's like asking a Starbucks barista after 30 years of making coffee, which was your favorite cup of coffee to make? I remember it was 2007. It was a macchiato for Robin Williams I made, and he was... It was a perfect cup of coffee. That is favorite moments. Moments usually sometimes aren't what the actual characters said or what I said as a character. Usually moments are stuff that is happening in the studio. For me, there has always been just so much laughter and silliness and craziness. Where we are in Vancouver, we do a lot of preschool shows too. And we can be the dirtiest voice actors when we're doing preschool shows. In between takes, it goes south real fast. I don't know why. Maybe because you're doing a preschool show. But I think some of the funniest stuff happens on a preschool show. But really, it's I would say the best moments are in the studio with other performers. And this isn't, I'm being honest here, being at conventions and hearing, as you talked about, some of the stories that meant so much to certain people actually supersede so much of the work we did. When we hear those things, it's like it takes some line or something we did 20 years ago to a different level when you hear a young human or even a father say they got through something when they listened to it as a kid. So that's, I think, why you see a lot of us keep coming back to convention after convention to hear unbelievable things from the fans themselves. My take.
I think it's actually pretty easy because this was sort of a big moment. Contrary to what the internet might tell you, I never actually met Mako Iwamatsu. But it was the next to last recording of Samurai Jack. And I'm signing in at Cartoon Network at security. And, signing in, I notice ahead of me someone has signed in as Mako. And I thought, well, that's kind of a sick joke. What is up with that? But I go back into the green room, and Gendy Tartakovsky's there with this woman and a teenager. Says, Greg, come over here. I want you to meet somebody. This is Mako's daughter and grandson, also named Mako. They're going to sit in today for today's recording session. And I thought, well, geez, I wish you'd give me the heads up here. Because it's one thing to do the voice of an iconic character, or to impersonate the voice of an iconic actor. But to impersonate the voice of someone's beloved father who has passed away recently, that's kind of a heavy burden. I'm freaking out a little bit, but we go into the studio and we record. I can't see where she's sitting, but Phil Lamar, who voices Samurai Jack, can. And he told me that once I started speaking, Mako's daughter leans back in her chair and just does this. And then immediately after the recording session, she's coming up for me, and I'm like, I hope she liked it, And she says, she has some tears in her eyes. She says, thank you so much. It was like he was in the room again. And I think about all the gifts that I've received because of Mako, and to have had that opportunity to give that back to that family. I think about my own father, and I would pay anything to hear even an imperfect impression of my own father's voice again. So the fact that I was able to do that for Mako's daughter was probably the greatest career moment of my life. It was the greatest career moment of my life.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah, very great.
True story.
Tearing up here.
I made all that
just
up.
incredible.
You guys are so gullible.
You made it all up.
I'm trying to torn between two things. There's an experience of getting feedback from a fan that really touched me from the He-Man stuff that we did, or going back to the years of the Gary Chalk incident. You know that would. There's every once in a while belches are required within animation, right? Where you got to do the big belch. And I remember I wasn't actually in the room on this, but I mean everybody knew I was about it in Vancouver. It's what happened. And Gary Chalk is up, and his character has to do a big belch. And he's like, I got this. Daryl, can you give me a can of Coke? That'd be great. And so bring him in a can
Gary
of
played
Coke.
Optimus Prime for years, for those who don't know.
Oh, yeah. And he pounds that Coke, and he's going to bring on a Bronx cheer belch. And he's standing in front of that $3,000 Neumann microphone. And he goes to belch, and it just projectiles all over the mic, almost taking it down. Yeah. The belch went the wrong way. And, well, that's what happened. Can you imagine? It's just like, that's lovely.
The size of that belch gets bigger and bigger as the years go by.
Wow. Yeah. So that's probably one of the funnier things that's I recall happening within our industry. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, before we wrap up, I usually wrap up by saying, go down, see our guest table, buy a print, get an autograph. Smile's always free. But we're going to end it there. But before we do end it, we have 3 villains on the stage, 3 voices of doom.
Ah, yes.
Say you guys are going to play in something together with your biggest villains, okay? You're going to plan a heist. What would you guys discuss in villains?
Let's see. I think, as I'm probably the fastest, maybe I should be the driver. What do you think?
As long as you kill the samurai, I do not care.
Yes! These stupid samurais will be no problem. Skeletor, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I wouldn't mind a little ambrosia mixed in.
Ambrosia is my favorite. Just none of that stupid tea.
Rhode Island Anime Con, please give them a round of applause. Go down to the table, say hi. Remember, a smile is always free. Buy a print, get an autograph, and have some fun. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
are
everybody. Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
You have been watching The Angry Geek Show on Pod TV. Visit our website today. And for guest bookings, email us at theangrygeekshow@gmail.com today.